The shuttle moved slowly through the darkness of space. Danny Brooks sat near the window and watched the stars pass by like tiny white dots on a black wall. He was 32 years old, and this was his first time leaving Earth. His heart was beating fast, but his face was calm. He had trained himself to hide his feelings a long time ago. The Galactic Embassy station appeared in the distance. It was huge. Danny had seen pictures of it before. The pictures could not show how big it really was. The station was shaped like a giant ring with towers rising from it in every direction. Lights blinked on its surface like a city floating in space. Ships of all sizes moved around it, coming and going from 100 different worlds. Danny took a deep breath. He was here as Earth's representative for the Interstellar Technology Exchange Program. It was a big honor. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Coalition 2 years ago. Before that, humans did not even know that aliens existed. Now, Danny was going to work with beings who had traveled the stars for thousands of years. The shuttle docked with a soft bump. Danny picked up his bag and walked toward the exit. The doors opened, and he stepped into a world that was nothing like home. The air smelled different. It was clean but also strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. The walls of the station were made of a smooth white material that glowed softly. Aliens walked past him in every direction. Some were tall and thin with blue skin. Others were short and covered in fur. A few floated in the air without any legs at all. Nobody looked at Danny. Nobody cared that he was there. A woman in a gray uniform was waiting for him near the entrance. She had brown hair tied back in a simple style, and her eyes looked tired but kind. "Commander Brooks?" she asked. "That's me," Danny said. "I'm Captain Emma Wilson. I'll be your guide here." She shook his hand firmly. "Welcome to the station. Try not to stare too much. The aliens don't like it." Danny nodded. He had already noticed that some of the beings around him were looking at him with cold eyes. Humans were new here. They were not welcome. Emma led him through long hallways and wide-open spaces. She explained things as they walked. The station was home to representatives from over 200 species. The Galactic Coalition was like a government for the galaxy. Every species had a voice, but some voices were louder than others. "The most powerful group here is the Valari Empire," Emma said. "They've been traveling through space for 10,000 years. They think they're better than everyone else. And honestly, most of the galaxy agrees with them." "What are they like?" Danny asked. "Tall, beautiful, cold." Emma shrugged. "They live for centuries. They have technology we can barely understand. And they look at humans like we're insects." Danny said nothing. He had expected this. Earth was a young world. Humans had only learned to fly about 100 years ago. Compared to species that had built empires across the stars, humans were like babies learning to walk. They arrived at a small room that would be Danny's home for the next year. It was simple but clean. A bed, a desk, a window that looked out into space. Danny put his bag down and looked around. "I know it's not much," Emma said, "but you'll spend most of your time in the engineering labs anyway." "It's fine," Danny said. "I didn't come here for comfort." Emma smiled for the first time. "Good answer. Get some rest. Tomorrow, you meet the Valari delegation." She left, and Danny was alone. He sat on the bed and thought about his life. He had grown up in a small town in Ohio. His father was a mechanic. His mother was a teacher. They had worked hard to give him a good education. Danny had studied engineering in college and then joined the space program. He had spent 10 years learning and building and dreaming of the stars. Now he was here, and he was going to make his family proud. The next morning, Danny put on his uniform and walked to the main council chamber. The room was enormous. The ceiling was so high that Danny could not see the top. Seats were arranged in circles, rising up like steps in a stadium. Aliens of every kind sat in those seats, talking in languages that Danny could not understand. At the center of the room was a raised platform. That was where the Valari delegation sat. Danny saw them immediately. They were impossible to miss. The Valari were tall and slender, with skin that shined like polished silver. Their eyes glowed in soft colors, blue and violet and gold. They wore robes that flowed like water, and they moved with a grace that made everyone else look clumsy. At the head of their group sat a young woman. She looked about 19 or 20 years old, but Danny knew that Valari aged differently. She could be much older than she appeared. Her hair was long and white, falling past her shoulders like fresh snow. Her eyes were a deep violet that seemed to look right through him. This was Princess Liara, daughter of Emperor Theron. Danny had read about her. She was known for her intelligence and her beauty. She was also known for her pride. The report said she believed humans were the lowest species in the coalition. Their eyes met across the room. Danny gave a small nod of respect. Liara looked at him for a moment. Then she turned away, as if he was not worth her attention. Danny felt something cold in his chest, but he did not let it show. He found his seat and sat down quietly. Emma appeared next to him. "Don't take it personally," she whispered. "She treats everyone that way." "I'm not here to make friends," Danny said. "I'm here to work." And work he did. For the next 3 weeks, Danny spent every hour in the engineering labs. He studied the station systems. He learned how the energy grid worked. He asked questions and took notes and ran calculations. Late into the night, the other engineers were surprised by his dedication. Most humans gave up after a few days. The technology was too advanced, the concepts too strange. But Danny kept going. He made mistakes and learned from them. He failed and tried again. He was not the smartest person on the station. He knew that. But he was willing to work harder than anyone else did, and slowly, he began to understand. The station's energy grid had a problem. It was small, but it was there. A fluctuation that caused power drops in certain sections. The Valari engineers had been trying to fix it for months, but they could not find the source. Danny thought he knew the answer. He spent a week checking his calculations. He ran simulations. He asked other human engineers to review his work. When he was finally sure, he requested permission to present his findings to the council. The request was approved. Danny did not know it yet, but he was about to face the worst day of his life. The morning of the presentation, Danny woke up before the station's lights turned on. He had not slept well. His mind kept running through the calculations, checking every number, every formula. He had to be perfect. There was no room for mistakes. He showered and put on his best uniform. He looked at himself in the mirror. Just a regular man from Ohio. Brown hair, brown eyes, average height. Nothing special about him at all. But inside his mind was the solution to a problem that had confused the greatest engineers in the galaxy. He grabbed his datapad and walked to the council chamber. The room was already full when he arrived. Representatives from 12 different species sat in their assigned seats. Some looked curious. Most looked bored. A human making a presentation was not something they expected to be interesting. The Valari delegation sat at the center, as always. Princess Liara was in her usual place, her violet eyes cold and distant. She was wearing a robe of deep purple that made her silver skin glow even brighter. 2 advisors sat on either side of her, old Valari men with faces like carved stone. Danny walked to the presentation platform at the center of the room. His hands was steady, but his heart was racing. He activated his datapad and connected it to the display system. A hologram appeared in the air above him, showing the station's energy grid in glowing blue lines. "Thank you for allowing me to speak today," Danny began. His voice was calm and clear. My name is Commander Daniel Brooks, representing Earth in the Technology Exchange Program. Nobody responded. A few aliens whispered to each other. One of them laughed softly. Danny continued. For the past 3 weeks, I have been studying the station's energy distribution system. As many of you know, there has been a recurring fluctuation in sectors 7 through 12. Power drops of 3 to 5%, happening at irregular intervals. He pressed a button and the hologram changed. Red spots appeared on the grid, showing where the problems occurred. The Valari engineering team has been working on this issue for several months. They have checked the generators, the conduits, and the distribution nodes. All of these systems are functioning correctly. Princess Liara raised one eyebrow slightly. It was the first time she had shown any interest. The problem, Danny said, is not in the hardware. It is in the software. Specifically, in the synchronization protocol between the main grid and the backup systems. He pressed another button. Numbers and formulas appeared in the air, floating beside the grid diagram. The station uses an old synchronization method that was designed for smaller networks. When the backup systems check in with the main grid, there is a tiny delay, just a few milliseconds. But over time, these delays add up. They create a pattern of interference that causes the power fluctuations. Danny paused and looked around the room. Some of the engineers from other species were leaning forward now, studying his calculations. The Valari advisors were frowning. My team has developed a new synchronization protocol, Danny continued. It eliminates the delay by using predictive algorithms instead of reactive ones. In our simulations, this protocol reduces the power fluctuation by 98%. He showed them the simulation results. The red spots on the grid turned green, one by one. We believe this solution can be implemented within 2 weeks, with minimal disruption to station operations. Danny lowered his datapad and stood straight. I am happy to answer any questions. Silence filled the chamber. Danny waited. He could feel sweat forming on the back of his neck, but he kept his face calm. Then Princess Liara began to laugh. It was not a kind laugh. It was cold and sharp, like glass breaking. The sound echoed through the chamber, and everyone turned to look at her. This is what Earth sends us? She said. Her voice was beautiful, like music, but the words cut like knives. A species that was still burning fossil fuels a mere century ago now presumes to lecture the coalition on energy systems. Danny felt his stomach drop, but he did not move. He did not speak. Liara stood up from her seat. She was tall, much taller than Danny. She walked toward him slowly, her robes flowing behind her like water. Your mathematics are elementary, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. A first-year student at any Valari academy could produce better work. Your methods are crude. Your understanding is shallow. You have looked at a complex system and seen only the surface. She stopped in front of him, close enough that Danny could see the cold light in her violet eyes. Perhaps humans should remain on their little blue world, she continued, playing with their primitive toys, learning to walk before they try to run. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, when your species has evolved enough to contribute meaningfully, we might listen to what you have to say. Her advisors nodded in agreement. Some representatives from other species chuckled nervously. Others looked away, embarrassed for the human who stood alone in the center of the room. Liara turned to the council. I move to remove this presentation from the official records. It wastes our time and insults our intelligence. Seconded, one of her advisors said immediately. Agreed, said a voice from the upper seats. Danny stood frozen. The weight of 100 eyes pressed down on him like a physical force. He could feel his face growing hot. His hands wanted to shake, but he would not let them. He saw Emma in the corner of the room. Her face was red with anger. She looked like she wanted to stand up and shout at the princess. But Danny caught her eye and shook his head slightly. No, this was not the time. The vote was quick. Danny's presentation was erased from the records. 3 weeks of work, gone in an instant. Princess Liara returned to her seat. She did not look at Danny again. To her, he was already forgotten. A tiny insect that had buzzed too close and been swatted away. Danny looked down at his datapad. The screen was blank now. Everything he had worked for was gone. For a long moment, he did not move. The chamber was silent, waiting to see what the human would do. Would he cry? Would he shout? Would he beg for another chance? Danny did none of those things. He closed his datapad slowly. He straightened his uniform. And then he gave a single nod, respectful and calm, to the council. Without saying a word, he turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Every alien in the room watched him go. Some expected him to stop, to turn around, to fight back. But Danny kept walking. His back was straight. His head was high. The doors opened in front of him. He stepped through, and he did not look back. Emma found him an hour later in his quarters. He was packing his bag. "Danny, what are you doing?" she asked. "Leaving," he said simply. "You can't just leave." What happened in there was wrong. That was diplomatic misconduct. We can file a complaint. The coalition has rules about this kind of thing. Danny folded his shirt and placed it in his bag. And what would happen if I filed a complaint? Emma hesitated. There would be an investigation, hearings, maybe an apology. Maybe. Danny zipped his bag closed. And during all of that, I would stay here, waiting, hoping that someone else would decide I deserved respect. He shook his head. That's not who I am, Emma. But your career. My career is mine to build, not hers to grant. He picked up his bag and looked at his friend. Tell the team I said goodbye. And tell them to keep working on that energy solution. It's solid. They'll understand that eventually. Emma's eyes were wet. Danny, please. Don't let her win. Danny smiled, but there was sadness in it. She didn't win anything. She just showed me who she is. And now I know where I need to be. He walked past her toward the door. Where's that? Emma called after him. Danny stopped at the doorway. He looked back over his shoulder. Home, he said. I have work to do. Then he was gone. The shuttle bay was quiet when Danny arrived. Only a few workers moved between the ships, checking equipment and loading cargo. None of them paid attention to the human walking toward the Earth transport. Danny carried his single bag over his shoulder. It was not heavy. He had not brought much with him, and he was not taking much away. Just clothes, a few books, and his datapad. Everything he needed to start again. The shuttle to Earth was small and old. It was the same ship that had brought him here 3 weeks ago. Back then, Danny had been full of hope. He had believed that if he worked hard enough, if he proved himself, the galaxy would accept him. Accept humans. He knew better now. A worker near the shuttle looked up as Danny approached. He was a short alien with green skin and 4 arms. His name badge said Mike in English letters, which made Danny smile slightly. Even aliens used human names sometimes. Early departure? Mike asked. Your ticket says next week. Change my plans, Danny said. Mike shrugged with all 4 shoulders. Your choice. Shuttle leaves in 20 minutes. Danny nodded and walked up the ramp into the ship. The inside was simple. 2 rows of seats facing each other, a small window on each side, and a door at the back leading to the cargo area. Danny chose a seat near the window and put his bag on the floor. He was alone in the shuttle. No other humans were leaving today. Through the window, Danny could see the station stretching out in all directions. Lights blinked on the towers. Ships moved through the darkness like fish swimming through water. Somewhere in that massive structure, Princess Liara was probably sitting in her beautiful room, drinking expensive drinks and laughing with her advisors about the stupid human who had dared to speak in her presence. Danny did not feel angry. Not anymore. The anger had burned through him in the first hour after the council meeting, hot and sharp. But now it was gone, replaced by something colder and harder. Determination. He had learned something important today. The galaxy did not care about humans. The Coalition did not want Earth. They saw humans as insects, as primitive creatures who had stumbled into a world too big for them. But they were wrong. Danny knew. They were wrong because he knew the truth about his people. Humans were not special because they were smart or strong or ancient. Humans were special because they never gave up. They fell down and got back up. They failed and tried again. They were told they could not do something, and they found a way to do it anyway. 100 years ago, humans could not fly. 50 years ago, humans had never left their planet. 10 years ago, humans did not know aliens existed. And now, here was Danny, sitting in a shuttle that would take him home, thinking about everything that could happen in the next 10 years. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. The shuttle engines hummed to life. Danny felt the floor vibrate beneath his feet. A voice came through the speakers, speaking first in the common galactic language and then in English. Departure in 5 minutes. Please remain seated. The door at the front of the shuttle opened, and Emma ran inside. Her face was red, and she was breathing hard. She had clearly run all the way from the living quarters. "Danny!" she gasped. "Wait, please." Danny looked at her but did not stand up. "Emma, I already told you. I know what you told me." She walked toward him and sat down in the seat across from his. "And I know you're not going to change your mind. I just needed to see you before you left." Danny said nothing. He waited. Emma took a deep breath. What happened today was not fair. It was cruel and wrong. And I'm sorry I couldn't stop it. It wasn't your job to stop it. Maybe not. But it still hurts to watch. Emma leaned forward. "Danny, you're one of the best engineers I've ever worked with. Your solution was good. Really good. The Valari know it too. They just couldn't admit that a human figured out something they couldn't." Danny smiled slightly. "I know. Then why are you leaving? Why not stay and fight? Make them acknowledge you?" Danny was quiet for a moment. He looked out the window at the station, at the ships, at the endless stars beyond. "Because that's not the point," he said finally. "Respect is not something you can force people to give you. It's not something you win in arguments or debates. Real respect is earned. It's built with your own hands, in your own time, on your own terms." He turned back to Emma. "If I stay here and fight for recognition, I'm playing their game. I'm accepting that they get to decide if I'm good enough. But I don't need their approval. I never did. So what will you do? Go home, work, build something." Danny's eyes had a new light in them, a quiet fire that Emma had not seen before. "Earth is everything we need. We have smart people, good resources, and the will to succeed. We just need to believe in ourselves, instead of waiting for the galaxy to believe in us." The shuttle shook slightly as it began to separate from the station. 2 minutes to departure. The speaker announced. Emma stood up. She had to go, but she did not want to leave. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Danny smiled. "Count on it. And when you do, things will be different." Emma nodded. She reached out and took his hand, squeezing it tight. "Good luck, Danny." "You too. Take care of the team for me." She let go and walked toward the door. At the exit, she stopped and looked back. Danny? What she said about humans being primitive, about us not being ready. Emma shook her head. "She's wrong. You know that, right?" Danny looked at her calmly. I know. And someday, she'll know it too. Emma smiled through the tears in her eyes. Then she stepped out of the shuttle, and the door closed behind her. Danny was alone again. The shuttle lifted off the deck and moved toward the exit. Through the window, Danny watched the station grow smaller. The lights faded. The towers shrank. Soon, it was just a tiny dot in the endless black of space. Gone. All of it. The humiliation. The laughter. The cold eyes of the princess who had dismissed him like garbage. Danny left it all behind. He thought about his father back in Ohio, a simple man who fixed cars for a living. His father had taught him many things, but one lesson stood above all the others. When someone pushes you down, his father had said, you have two choices. You can lie there and feel sorry for yourself, or you can get back up and show them what you're made of. Danny was getting back up. He closed his eyes and began the plan. He would return to Earth. He would find other engineers, other scientists, other dreamers. He would build a team of people who believed in human potential. And together, they would create something the galaxy had never seen before. Not for revenge. Not to prove Princess Liara wrong, but because that was what humans did. They built. They grew. They reached for the stars even when the stars seemed impossibly far away. The shuttle jumped to faster than light speed, and the stars stretched into long lines of light. Danny was going home. Behind him on the station, news of his departure spread quickly. Most aliens forgot about it within hours. The human engineer who had been humiliated and ran away. Not surprising. Humans were weak. Everyone knew that Princess Liara did not even remember his name by the next morning. She had more important things to think about. Humans were beneath her notice. She had no idea what she had done. She did not know that her cruelty had planted a seed that would grow into something powerful, something that would change the galaxy forever. But that was in the future. For now, Danny Brooks was just a man on a shuttle, flying through the darkness of space, heading home with a dream in his heart and fire in his soul. And he never looked back. 5 years passed like water flowing down a river. The galaxy kept spinning. Empires rose and fell. Treaties were signed and broken. And through it all, the Galactic Coalition continued its slow dance of politics and power. On the embassy station, nobody remembered Daniel Brooks. He had been one of many humans who came, failed, and left. Nothing special. Nothing worth remembering. Princess Liara had grown in those 5 years. She was no longer a young princess playing at diplomacy. She was now a full ambassador of the Valari Empire, respected and feared across the coalition. Her father, Emperor Theron, trusted her with the most important negotiations. She had proven herself worthy of her title, but even Liara could not have predicted what was about to happen. It started with a warning. A small flicker in the Nexus core, the ancient technology that powered faster-than-light communication across the galaxy. The Nexus was older than any living civilization. Nobody knew who had built it, but everyone depended on it. Without the Nexus, messages that took seconds would take years. Trade would collapse. Governments would fall. The coalition itself would break apart. The flicker became a shake. The shake became a quake. Within weeks, the Nexus core was dying. The greatest minds from every species worked on the problem. Valari engineers studied the ancient systems. Coalition scientists ran endless simulations. They tried everything they could think of, but nothing worked. The decay was accelerating. In 6 months, maybe less, the Nexus would fail completely. Panic spread through the galaxy. Stock markets crashed. Governments issued emergency orders. For the first time in 1,000 years, the coalition faced a threat it could not stop. Then, from Earth, came unexpected news. A small company called Brooks Dynamics had announced a new technology. Quantum Bridge Communication, they called it. It was not just a patch for the Nexus core. It was a complete replacement. Faster, more stable, more efficient. And it was ready to deploy. The Coalition had no choice. They sent a delegation to Earth to negotiate. Princess Liara was chosen to lead the mission. It was a punishment as much as an honor. The Valari did not want to ask humans for help. It was shameful. But Liara was the best negotiator they had. And this was the most important deal in galactic history. She prepared carefully. She studied everything about Brooks Dynamics. The company had been founded 5 years ago by a single engineer. It had grown quickly, hiring the best minds on Earth. Now it was worth more than most countries. The founder's name made her pause. Daniel Brooks. The name seemed familiar, but she could not remember why. The delegation arrived at Earth on a cold winter morning. Their ships landed in a city called New Chicago, a gleaming metropolis of glass and steel that rose from the shores of a great lake. Humans gathered to watch them arrive, not with fear, but with curiosity. Things had changed on Earth in 5 years. Liara and her advisors were escorted to a building in the heart of the city. It was tall and modern, with the words Brooks Dynamics written in simple letters above the entrance. Nothing fancy. Nothing trying to impress. Just a statement of fact. They rode an elevator to the top floor. The doors opened into a large laboratory filled with holographic displays and humming machines. Engineers in white coats moved between workstations, focused on their tasks. None of them stopped to bow or show respect to the alien delegation. They simply kept working. Liara found this strange. On other worlds, her presence demanded attention. Here, she was just another visitor. A man stood at the center of the room, his back to them. He was looking at a hologram of the Nexus core, turning it slowly with his fingers. He was tall for a human, with broad shoulders and brown hair that was starting to show gray at the edges. Dr. Brooks, one of the assistants, said, "The Coalition delegation is here?" The man turned around. Liara felt her breath catch in her throat. She knew that face. Those calm brown eyes. That quiet, steady expression. Memories flooded back, 5 years old but suddenly fresh. A council chamber. A presentation. Laughter. Her laughter. Daniel Brooks looked at her. There was no anger in his eyes. No satisfaction. No satisfaction. No triumph. He simply nodded politely, the same nod he had given the day he walked out of the council chamber. "Ambassador," he said, "welcome to Earth." Liara did not know what to say. For the first time in her life, she was speechless. The other members of the delegation did not notice her reaction. They were too busy staring at the technology around them. The holographic displays showed things they did not understand. Equations that did not fit their theories. Designs that should not be possible. Dr. Brooks, the Coalition ambassador, said, stepping forward. He was an older alien with gray skin and kind eyes. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. As you know, the situation is urgent." "I know," Danny said. "Please sit down. We have a lot to discuss." They sat around a large table. Assistants brought drinks and data files. Danny explained his technology in simple terms, walking them through the basics of quantum bridge communication. It was not about fixing the Nexus. It was about replacing it entirely. "Your system is old," Danny said. "It was designed for a galaxy with 100 civilizations. Now there are thousands. The Nexus cannot keep up. It was never meant to last forever. And your technology can replace it?" The ambassador asked. "Not just replace it. Improve it." Danny pressed a button and a new hologram appeared. It showed a network of points connected by glowing lines. "Our system is modular. It grows with you. The more nodes you add, the faster it becomes. And it's completely independent. No single point of failure. No ancient machinery that nobody understands. The delegation studied the hologram in silence. Even the most skeptical among them could see the elegance of the design. This was not primitive human tinkering. This was genius. What do you want in return? Liara finally spoke. Her voice was calm, but her heart was racing. Danny looked at her. For a moment, their eyes met, and Liara saw something she did not expect. Not hatred. Not revenge. Just a quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly who he was and what he was worth. 3 things, Danny said. First, Earth becomes a full voting member of the coalition. Equal standing with all other species. No restrictions. No probation period. The ambassador nodded slowly. That can be arranged. Second, humans are granted equal access to all scientific and diplomatic councils. Our researchers can work alongside yours. Our diplomats can speak in your chambers. Full participation. Also reasonable. And third, Danny leaned forward. This technology will be shared freely. With everyone. No licenses. No fees. No restrictions. Every civilization in the galaxy gets access, whether they can pay for it or not. The delegation was stunned. They had expected demands, wealth, power, territory. Instead, the human was giving away the most valuable technology in the galaxy for almost nothing. That is, remarkably generous, the ambassador said. Danny smiled slightly. Humanity doesn't hoard progress. We share it. That's how we grew. That's how everyone grows. He stood up and looked around the room at the delegation. At the aliens who had once dismissed his entire species as primitive. At the princess who had laughed at him in front of the galaxy. The coalition can keep arguing about who is superior, Danny said. You can keep looking down at younger species. But that's not how you build something lasting. You build it together. You build it by lifting each other up. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. At the millions of humans who had worked and dreamed and built this future. Humanity is ready, he said quietly. We've always been ready. You just weren't looking. Liara watched him. Her face was calm, but inside, shame burned like fire. She finally understood. The man she had humiliated 5 years ago had not run away. He had walked away. There was a difference, and now he had returned, not for revenge, but to save the galaxy that had rejected him. The treaty was signed 3 days later. It was the fastest negotiation in coalition history. Nobody wanted to argue. Nobody wanted to delay. The Nexus Core was dying, and Daniel Brooks held the only cure. Earth became a full member of the Galactic Coalition. Human scientists joined research teams across the galaxy. Human diplomats took their seats in the great councils. And the quantum bridge network began to spread, connecting worlds in ways the ancient Nexus never could. The galaxy was changing. And for the first time, humans were leading the way. News traveled fast. Daniel Brooks became famous, not just on Earth, but on 1,000 worlds. They called him the man who saved the stars. The engineer who dreamed bigger than anyone else. Some called him a hero. Others called him lucky. A few called him dangerous. But Danny did not care about fame. He cared about the work. He spent long hours in his laboratory, improving the technology, training new engineers, planning for the future. He had built something important, and he wanted to make sure it lasted. On the final day of the delegation's visit, Princess Liara requested a private meeting with him. Danny agreed. They met in the observation deck at the top of the Brooks Dynamics building. The room was simple, just a few chairs and a wide window that looked out at the sky. Earth stretched below them, blue and green and beautiful. Clouds moved slowly across the continents. City lights sparkled in the darkness on the night side. Liara stood by the window, looking down at the planet. She had changed in the past few days. The arrogance was still there, but it was softer now. More careful. She had seen things on Earth that confused her understanding of humans. The kindness they showed to strangers. The way they worked together without caring about status or species. The laughter that filled their streets. These were not primitive people. They never had been. Danny entered the room and stood beside her. They did not speak at first. They just watched the earth turn slowly beneath them. "I owe you an apology," Liara said finally. Her voice was quiet, almost fragile. "What I said 5 years ago was cruel, ignorant. I judged your entire species by my own arrogance." Danny did not respond immediately. He looked at the clouds, at the mountains, at the oceans that covered most of his home world. So much beauty. So much potential. "I remember that day clearly," he said. "I remember standing in that council chamber, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. I remember the sound of your laughter. Cold, sharp, like glass breaking." Liara flinched. "I was young, stupid. I thought that power meant looking down on others." "Many people think that," Danny said. "It's not just a Valari thing. Humans have made the same mistake many times in our history." He turned to face her. His eyes were calm, without anger or resentment. "Just understanding. You know what I learned that day?" he asked. "I learned that respect isn't given. It's built. With your own hands. In your own time. On your own terms." Liara met his gaze. "I don't understand. When you dismissed me, I had a choice. I could stay and fight for your approval. I could beg the coalition to recognize my work. I could spend years trying to prove that I was good enough for you." Danny shook his head. "But that would mean accepting your judgment. It would mean letting you decide my worth." He walked to one of the chairs and sat down. Liara followed, taking the seat across from him. "So, I left," Danny continued. "Not because you beat me. Not because I was ashamed. I left because I refused to play a game where someone else made the rules. I knew what I was capable of. I didn't need the galaxy to tell me." "And you came back," Liara said softly. "After everything we said about humans. After all the doors we closed in your faces. You came back to save us, not to save you." Danny smiled slightly. "To show you what we could do together. There's a difference." Liara was quiet for a moment. She had lived for over a century, though she looked young by human standards. She had met leaders and kings, scientists and warriors. But she had never met anyone like Daniel Brooks. A man who had every reason to hate her, but chose not to. "Every species in the coalition measures success by ancient achievements," Danny said. "By the empires your ancestors built. By the technologies your great-grandparents invented. You inherit glory. You wear it like a crown." He leaned forward. "Humans don't do that. We measure success by what happens next. Not what our ancestors did, but what we will do. Every generation tries to go further than the one before. We're always reaching, always growing. But that must be exhausting," Liara said. "To always feel like you haven't done enough." "Maybe, but it's also exciting." Danny's eyes lit up with the same fire Emma had seen 5 years ago. "We don't know our limits because we haven't found them yet. Every time we think we've gone as far as we can go, someone comes along and goes further. 100 years ago, we couldn't fly. Now we're spreading across the galaxy." He stood up and walked back to the window. The sun was rising over the Pacific Ocean, painting the clouds in shades of gold and pink. "When you laughed at me in that council chamber, you thought you were putting me in my place. But you were wrong. You didn't define my place. I did. And I chose to make it here, on this planet, building something that would change everything." Liara stood and joined him at the window. "I understand that now. And I'm sorry." Not just for what I said, but for what I believed. For thinking that your species was beneath us. Danny looked at her. He saw the shame in her eyes. The genuine regret. She was not just apologizing because she had to. She meant it. The galaxy is big, Danny said. There's room for all of us. Valarian humans and every other species out there. But only if we stop measuring each other by old standards. Only if we start judging each other by what we do, not what our ancestors did. He extended his hand. A human gesture. Simple, open, an offer of peace. Let's move forward, he said. Together. Liara looked at his hand. In Valari culture, touching a stranger was considered intimate, personal, but she understood what the gesture meant. Trust, a new beginning. She took his hand. Together, she said. They shook hands as the sun rose over Earth. Two people from different worlds. Connected by a moment of understanding. Later that day, the delegation departed. Their ships rose into the sky and vanished among the stars. Liara watched Earth grow smaller through her window, thinking about everything she had learned. Humans were strange creatures. They lived such short lives, but they burned so bright. They failed constantly, but they never stopped trying. They had every reason to hate the galaxy that had rejected them, but instead they chose to help Dodd. Maybe that was their greatest strength. Not their technology, not their determination, but their ability to forgive, to move on, to keep walking forward without looking back. Danny watched the ships leave from his office window. Emma stood beside him, older now, with gray in her hair and lines around her eyes. She had stayed on the station for 3 more years before coming home to join Brooks Dynamics. You did it, she said. You actually did it. We did it, Danny corrected. All of us. Every engineer, every scientist, every dreamer who believed that Earth had something to offer. But it started with you. On that shuttle, 5 years ago, when you decided not to give up. Danny smiled. I never decided not to give up. I just decided to keep going. There's a difference. Emma laughed. You and your differences. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Do you think she really understood? Emma asked. The princess, I mean. Do you think she really learned something? Danny thought about it. About Liara's eyes when she apologized. About the way she took his hand. About the long journey that had brought them both to this moment. I think she did, he said. And I think she'd teach others. That's how change works. One person at a time. One conversation at a time. One handshake at a time. He turned away from the window and walked toward his desk. There was work to do. New systems to design. New problems to solve. The galaxy was changing, and Danny wanted to be part of it. Emma watched him go. Danny, one more question. He stopped. Yeah? Was it worth it? All those years of work? All those moments when everyone told you it was impossible? Danny turned back and looked at her. His eyes were bright, full of life and purpose. Every second, he said. Because I never did it for them. I did it for us. For humanity. For everyone who ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. He smiled. And now we know. And we're just getting started. He walked into his office and closed the door. Emma smiled and turned back to the window. Outside, the sun was shining on a world that had just become the center of the galaxy. A world of dreamers and builders. Of people who fell down and got back up. Of humans. And somewhere out among the stars, the galaxy was finally beginning to understand what that meant.